Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Weaponizing psychological terms distorts our relationships. Have we begun to be so overly sensitive that we protect ourselves with therapy speak and love to wrap ourselves up in self-righteous accusations that point the finger? At others, of course. You are a narcissist. You are gaslighting me. You are love bombing me. It's certainly a comfort to grab onto these labels. It's exactly that comfort that feeds our own denial of how we also play a part in the problems. It feeds our love of blame. Take a moment to think about all the stories people tell themselves about their partners. The stories rarely include even a single sentence that acknowledges their own contribution to the problems. We all love an audience that nods their head in agreement as we list all the sins the partner has committed. We all love the role of being the good guy who is simply a victim, and therapy speak helps us decide we know what's wrong with them. These accusations feed a black-white 1-10 narrative that deliciously feeds our love of blame, which erases the complicatedness of truth in the gray in between the black and white, or the 4, 5, 6, and 7 in between the 1 and 10. We hide out in the simplicity of they're wrong and I'm right. It can be a real battle to get someone to even look at their 3% or 5% of the problems. We all use therapy terms in too casual a way. Oh, you are so OCD has become an ordinary thing to say, when the reality is that OCD is a serious battle for many people. We grab onto an Instagram post and apply it to the loved ones without a real depth of understanding. Then in an argument, we hurl these terms at our partners as part of being defensive. We live in a culture that loves simplicity, the simplicity of blame and agreement. We don't manage disagreement very well. None of us do. And in fact, too often stay silent to keep the peace. It's sad that we live in a world that sees such severe polarization that Congress is unable to make bipartisan agreements. Bipartisan agreements are all part of loving relationships. How do we accommodate both people? That's the job. Disagreements are part of every relationship, and we have to learn how to navigate them in problem solving. Disagreements keep things real for both people. I love the West Wing episode when Martin Sheen, as president, hired a Republican because it was important to be disagreed with in order to be a great president. The same thing holds true for a great relationship. There must be room for disagreement. As a therapist, I have often found myself explaining we can all be narcissistic and that narcissism is on a continuum. I try to explore, is there a reason a partner might be self-absorbed right now in their life? Is it an anniversary of a death? Is just one example. I'm modeling being curious about what's going on as a way to invite a greater level of awareness of complexity. We are complicated as humans, and leaping to judgment erases the potential to understand that comes from curiosity. Certainly, being critical is easier than being curious. Today's guest is Dr. Isabel Morley, who will help us learn how therapy speak gets too easily weaponized and can hurt relationships. She is a clinical psychologist and EFT, one of my favorite things, certified couples therapist. Susan Johnson was on my podcast in the early days. Yeah. She is a contributing author to Psychology Today in her blog, Love Them or Leave Them, where she analyzes on-screen romantic relationships. She is also the co-host of Rom-Com Rescue, a podcast that teaches life and love lessons from romantic comedies. She is co-author of Navigating Intimacy, an introductory guide to couples and sex therapy. Dr. Isabel has been featured in the New Yorker, the Boston Globe, Business Insider, Vox, and Very Well Mind, among others. Thanks for being here with all of us today. Her new book, I wanted to say this after, is published this year in May. They're Not Gaslighting You, Ditch the Therapy Speak, and Stop Hunting for Red Flags in Every Relationship, which I love the idea that you did this.
I'm so glad, because I was worried that a lot of people would find it a little controversial, but so far, not the case.
No, I think it started with narcissism, people coming in and labeling, and I'd be like, narcissism's on a continuum, and we're all somewhat narcissistic because we have self-involved. So my first question to you, is there anything you disagree with in my intro? And I'm asking because I want to model being open to disagreement for my audience, because I practice what I preach.
I wish I could help you with that modeling. Unfortunately, I loved everything that you said and actually fully agree with every point that you made.
Okay, well, thanks. In the description for your book, you say, quote, "Our access to mental health information has turned all of us into armchair experts, vigilantly scouting for signs of disorder or abuse in every relationship. The problem is, if we look for it, we'll find it, which is why it seems like everyone is mentally unwell and no relationship is ever good enough. This book reminds readers that humans are messy, complicated, error-prone species, and that people need room to make mistakes." I love that paragraph. Please explain how true this is and why it matters.
I think the best explanation I can give is that every psych grad student who learns about a clinical disorder, who learns the DSM, sees everyone in their life through that lens. And if you choose to view the world through a clinical lens, it will seem pathological. You can find evidence for all kinds of pathology if that's what you're looking for, right?
Absolutely.
Confirmation bias. You decide somebody has a disorder, you find all the evidence for why they do, you ignore evidence that would go against that conclusion. And I think that people have gotten bits and pieces of information that have led to this wide-scale confirmation bias where we are evaluating and assessing each other clinically, as opposed to in a more humanistic way, seeing people as complicated and messy and, yes, error-prone, but not always pathological.
I was at a dinner party once, and I remember somebody looked at me and said, "So are you analyzing me?" And I said, "You have to pay me for that. That is a lot of work. It's not over a dinner table going to happen." And I've always been incredibly respectful and careful about diagnosis, because I really feel that there can just be a situation that has thrown somebody over the cliff. I remember I had a client who had been diagnosed schizophrenic, and I just remember, and this is many, many years ago, and she had lost sleep for like 2 weeks. She wasn't able to sleep. And I said to her, and this is like 20 years later, she's had no psychotic medicine, no episodes. And I said to her, "I really believe it was about not sleeping. I don't believe you're schizophrenic." But that taught me to be so careful and respectful. And I think that's part of what you're asking people, not to just casually toss it around.
No, and on social media, you do see some incredibly intelligent, well-trained, seasoned therapists tossing around diagnoses to a certain extent as they're defining them, explaining their presentations, how it might affect relationships, and people are mistakenly thinking that because that therapist is talking about it somewhat casually, that they would also diagnose that disorder casually, which therapists do not do. Like, as you know, we need a lot of evidence. We need to check off criteria and get collateral information or do assessments, and there are so many disorders with overlapping symptoms that it can be quite an in-depth process that takes weeks, months, sometimes years, depending on the person's history and presentation. And social media makes it look like it's so easy to check off 5 symptoms and there you go, you're a narcissist.
I completely agree. Are there dangers to using therapy speak to label those we love that you haven't talked about yet?
I think it just cuts off connection and conversation. If you are jumping to therapy speak to, set boundaries or to diagnose and label people, you have stopped being emotionally intimate with them. You are now acting like you are their provider or their assessor, as opposed to somebody who's in an intimate relationship with them, whether that's friendship or romantic relationship, and then you've changed the dynamic in a really negative way.
Absolutely. What is the difference between abuse and bad behavior? Because I did incest work back in 1980 when no one was talking about it. There were only 2 books written about it. And I've always been extra careful with the word abuse. So this particularly is something I pay attention to.
It can be a murky line, especially when it comes to emotional abuse. But abuse is about power and control, gaining power and control over another person without their consent. It is by people who have no insight, don't take responsibility, have no desire to change, and it is universally unacceptable behavior. Bad behavior is people behaving in ways that are ineffective, that may even flirt with a category of abuse, but who recognize their behavior is unacceptable, who don't want to act that way, who aren't trying to gain power and control, who are actually trying to connect as opposed to control. It can be very hard to tell the difference, but I think it's so important because every bad behavior is being labeled as abusive right now, which takes away the power of the word abuse.
Yes, I'm very sensitive to words and being more precise with words because I think it's about distinctions. It's about making distinctions. And so I like you helping my audience make that distinction between bad behavior and abuse. Let's be specific about 2 terms I hear the most often in my office.
I can guess.
You guess. Go for it.
Narcissist,
yes,
number 1.
And gaslighting, number 2. Yes. Please give us your concerns about these terms and what exactly are the nuances people who say this are misunderstanding.
Well, narcissism, when people say it, they mean narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
And people do not recognize, as you said, that narcissism exists on a spectrum. Having a personality disorder of narcissism is the extremes of otherwise normal feelings and behaviors. We are all a little bit grandiose. We are all a little bit selfish sometimes. Adolescents all appear pretty narcissistic. They don't meet criteria for the disorder. And when you jump to labeling somebody as having this disorder, you're saying that they present this way in basically every context in their life, pathologically, since, childhood essentially, without recognizing that maybe that's not the case. Gaslighting I have a hard time with. Gaslighting, the semantic bleaching of this word is very hard to roll back.
Oh, I love that semantic bleaching.
Yes. Because it used to mean something, and now I'm not even sure what it means. It was, born from a film, an abuse tactic, where someone systematically, insidiously, over time, makes you doubt your sense of reality and lose all self-trust. So you think you're going crazy and that whatever they say must be true. That is not the same thing as people who disagree with your memory of an event or think you're overreacting or invalidate your feelings. And those are not nice or effective things to do to somebody either, but it's not an abuse tactic. And gaslighting doesn't happen once during a fight with your spouse. Gaslighting happens over time in an abusive relationship.
That's right. Yeah. I think we all get a little drunk with the idea of blame, that we just love pointing that finger at somebody else. And I love the AA expression that 3 fingers are pointing back at yourself. And we don't love self-awareness, and we don't love looking at ourselves. So looking at someone else is so much more interesting and makes us just a little smug and self-righteous, perhaps.
The self-righteous piece is very real. If we can say, it's not our fault, it's your fault, you've got to fix this and change, there's always a temptation to absolve ourselves of blame. Psych students go through a phase of diagnosing everyone in their family right? As opposed to saying, well, maybe I was a part of this too, and it's just complicated. But then we have this culture where everyone is quickly pointing fingers and everybody is afraid of being called a narcissist or borderline or having a red flag. So people are quite vigilant in their relationships now.
I agree. So help us spot the red flags when we can tell that therapy talk is being weaponized.
I draw a distinction between misuse and weaponization. I think people can inaccurately use these terms. Weaponized crosses into abusive territory for me, where people are relying on these words to self-righteously absolve themselves of any blame or part in the problem and making the other person the entire issue. And they're usually twisting the meaning of the words in their favor to sort of get their desired outcome.
Yeah, that's right. And the word weaponized has gotten so overused in Congress, and it's amazing how we, in the polarization, we've grabbed on to these words and throw them like arrows or cannonballs, something heavy. Not arrows are too light, but you know what I'm saying, you know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of psych terms have been weaponized, have become a popular form of taking these words, and there's such weight behind scientific terms.
Yes, that's with all the social media out there. How do we separate fact from fiction? I saw a picture of a cute little critter, and I sent it to my son, and he went, "Mom, that's not real." And I was like, "You're kidding! Oh my God! I'm not even going to look at any cute little critters anymore because how do you tell?" I found myself feeding the social media airways. So what can we do to know when it's real?
Go to trusted experts. Go to actual clinical experts and listen to their content over influencers or other people who might seem like experts but aren't. And on social media, I would let everything spark curiosity and not a conclusion. If something sounds like it resonates, take it offline to an actual therapist or to a book. Don't let that be the end of your research.
And I think when we try to do 30-second sound clips or 50-second sound clips, using those words can garner attention. So another thing might be trying to listen for more specifics and details and nuances, that it's not something to just grab onto and start using.
Right. And remember that, there's a format that even the experts have to follow. They can't give you a full, in-depth, and nuanced perspective on a word, a disorder. So just remember you're getting a snippet.
That snippet is, absolutely. Explain the difference between love bombing and someone who is really excited and being extra nice, because that's come up too.
Again, love bombing is an abuse tactic where somebody comes in and tries to essentially take over your life through flattery and gift giving and acting as if they have all the same goals as you and everything you do is amazing. It's too much. It's over the top and it's consuming. They're communicating with you all the time. They're cutting you off from other parts of your life through their excessive engagement with you, or they're trying to repair after an abuse incident. Typical courtship, right, and repairing after a fight involves some gift giving, some flattery, some affection, but it shouldn't take over the rest of your life and isolate you from people. And it shouldn't be this excessive, we're soulmates, we're the only people in the world who matter to each other kind of language.
Yes. Okay. I love the title of Chapter 11 in your book. Did they violate your boundaries, or did they just not know how you felt? Because it gets at the problem of unspoken expectations. If you really love me, you would know what to do, which I just encounter constantly.
Yes. You know what I hear a lot is, I already told you when I'm upset, this is what I need you to do, and you didn't do it, so you violated my boundary. And what I tell people is, human memories are very fallible. You might have to tell them 50 times until they remember. Boundary violation happens in relationships and is not a reason to panic or to suddenly weaponize the word and end the conversation.
I always say it's more about a pattern, not about like one thing that somebody's got a different kind of habit with. They don't bring you flowers and you really want flowers. That's important to you. And so, but they forget, and then maybe they see the guy on the corner selling the flowers and they go, oh yeah, and they pick them up. But it's not, they need practice to get that habit in place. And it's not paying attention. And I think we do that. I think we erase people because they don't pay attention enough.
Yeah, and that's just because we feel hurt. We feel unimportant, we feel unprioritized, but instead of saying, I feel unimportant because you didn't remember to bring me flowers, we say, you violated my boundary because you didn't bring me flowers on a day when I wanted them, and you should have known that.
Yes, exactly. I loved your description of toxic as a very vague word. I did. It made me laugh. I think it was the 70s, but it might have been the early 80s. People would actually come in with this book about toxic parenting. And my insides would just kind of roll with, oh my goodness. And it was like really popular. And then it disappeared. But now all that stuff is back. So I loved you describing it as vague. Could you explain why that matters? Because it does.
Toxic is the catch-all term for anything that made you feel bad, but you don't want to have to define. And it's clear that it's the other person is the problem. People use toxic to mean abusive. They use toxic to mean a bad fit. They use toxic to mean the wrong time, wrong place. And when people say it, I really don't know what they're referring to, but I just know that they feel wronged, which is a very easy way of saying this was a bad situation for me and taking no responsibility for it.
Yes, it is this casual tossing these words around and not wanting to not wanting to be understood enough.
Yes.
You have to decide you need to respond, not label, because you want to be understood and because labeling is basically unfair.
Yeah, basically, yes.
I think a lot about values working. Like one of the things I'll say to people is, I'm really practical. That may not be your value, and I respect that, but I need to say this sentence about being practical. Because I own it, and I know that it's not everybody's value. But I do think if you're in a relationship, that value of thinking more about fairness really, really matters.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes to toxic, I could argue that every relationship is toxic. Sometimes, in some ways, with some people. And if that's the way you choose to see your relationships, people in your life, that's how you'll see it. And I think it's getting people into trouble.
I agree. Help us understand trigger, which is a word that now covers so many negative reactions, which worries me that it can be a way to escape dealing with hard conversations and hard things.
As you know, triggered originally meant somebody who has PTSD, and
yes, and I had a hard time with the trauma being bigger,
expanded.
And so I talk about smaller traumas and medium-sized traumas and PTSD because I worked with people out of Vietnam, and I'm like, this is a really important word. And rape, I worked at a rape crisis center.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to love my next book then, where I tackle some of those words. So triggered was meant to mean a trigger, a specific cue that brought back severe trauma symptoms, fight or flight responses, panic because of a specific trauma or ongoing trauma somebody had experienced. Now people use trigger to mean anything that made them feel bad, anxious, sad, hurt, vulnerable, whatever that word is, which is a very different meaning from this is making somebody experience acute PTSD symptoms in this moment. And I understand triggered is also it's a non-clinical word, so it can mean that. But yes, people are saying, you doing that triggers me, you can't do it anymore. But guess what? We have to face our hard feelings. We don't get to have other people save us from feeling bad feelings. It's just not how life works.
And we need practice with dealing with hard feelings, The more you practice, the more you grow up. I think it was Isidore Fromm, but it might have been Fritz Perls, said that growing up is honestly facing painful situations. And I remember wishing I had understood that many years ago. Because that need to protect ourselves and be defensive is really what's underneath all of these using words to aim at people.
Yeah, and part of the promises that we're trying to make ourselves, if we can find the right word, we can find the right medication, the right treatment plan, the right therapy to take away all of this suffering. Yes,
that's right.
I would love that too. It's not possible.
What haven't we covered about being human that would offer a little more wisdom for my audience?
I would say, remember that whatever words you have employed against other people could be employed against you as well. And it does not feel good to have somebody label you unfairly or see you through such an ungenerous, unforgiving, harsh light. And that we all owe each other a little bit more compassion and a little more leeway.
And I think accepting our humanity is part of that. And when you defend yourself against your own humanity, yes, I screwed up. I remember I was in a training group and this kind of guy who was famous said to me, I so admire how awkward you can be and how you can claim your mistakes. And I thought, this is a compliment?
Thanks.
But I think later I realized, yes, because I put myself out there and really grew so much from being able to do that. But to me, that's that process of owning our humanity.
Mm-hmm. Which, as therapists know, some of the most meaningful work you can do with your clients is when you make a mistake in session.
Yes, absolutely.
And
I remember this session with this woman who was fascinating, but she came in and was grilling me a long time, and I really admired, because people don't do that in the first session, and I was liking it, and then I was getting tired. and I remember when I finally, she said, well, you contradicted yourself when you said blah, blah, blah. And I went, you're right, I did that. I think I'm really tired. And it changed the whole dynamic in that moment. It was like you could just see her settle down with, okay, you can be real with me.
Yes, because we don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who knows all the answers or is perfect, right, and can hold it over us because they make no mistakes. We want to be in a relationship with somebody who's authentic, who is learning and growing and messy just like we are.
And I used to say I don't do therapist as goddess. Because I do think there's people out there that do.
Yes, there are.
Please remind people of the title of your book and your website and anything else you want them to know.
The book is called They're Not Gaslighting You, Ditch the Therapy Speak and Stop Hunting for Red Flags in Every Relationship. And they can find me at drisabelmorley.com or ironically on Instagram at drisabelmorley.
So the next time someone drops gaslighting in the middle of a disagreement because you remembered the story differently, take a breath. Maybe it's not a psychological thriller. Maybe it's just Tuesday and you're both tired. Let's save the fancy terms for therapy sessions, and remember, love thrives in clarity, not combat.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.